Moni, what is our first
Oh,
question?
all right. So I've got a couple queued up that are WoW specific. The first one is pretty um it's pretty short, but I think it can go into a very interesting direction. So this one is from Holiers, and he asks, "Is Elune lying about everything?" And I know that you had just put out like maybe a before you had before you'd gotten ill, you'd just put out a video pertaining to Elune. So I thought maybe you'd like to uh, build on that. So basically, is Elune lying about pretty much everything we know about her, everything in World of
Yeah.
Warcraft?
Okay, so lying is a very strong word because lying suggests that she's actively being deceptive, which isn't necessarily the case. Just because you have to think about the level of being that we're dealing with here. Now, literally, the video that will come out tomorrow um, has a short little nugget right at the end of the video about Elune. For those of you that do watch until that point, that I think will blow a couple of people away. Some of you may have already thought about it, but if we're just gonna go off of face value, what Elune is, do gods lie, or do gods simply change the truth? You know, when you're talking about mortals, and you're talking about our interactions with one another, yes, we lie to each other. You know, these can be white, small lies simply to keep the peace, or massive lies, you know, in order to get yourself ahead. These could be lies with malice, or, lies not necessarily with malice, but not quite as innocent as a little white lie. So we do lie. But when you're talking about gods, so you're talking about beings that is so much bigger than all of us, their motives is oftentimes very difficult to place. And one of my biggest issues, and this wasn't particularly your question, but I feel like I do want to say this because I don't really ever get a chance or an opportunity to say this. One of my biggest gripes whenever it comes to video games, but also talking about video games, speculating about video games, discussing lore within video games, is the willingness of the audience, me and you guys, to almost impose our own morality on the game and on the characters within the game. And this to me seems almost fundamentally flawed. If you play a game like Hitman, for example, right? In Hitman, you play as an assassin, someone that goes out of their way to kill people in sort of the sneakiest way possible. That's your goal. Now, morally speaking, we can all say that's quite evil, right? Being a hitman, quite evil. You should probably not be an assassin. But we all do it whenever we play Hitman, right? We're willing to put those morals aside and sort of be like, well, you know, this is in the spirit of the game. This is what the game was designed to be. And yes, I am an absolute killer. I just shot that guy in the face 50 times. It was funny, right? And we do this no problem. But then you get to a game like World of Warcraft, and suddenly a character does something. You know, a god level character will do something like, oh my god, that is just objectively evil. And it's sort of like, well, actually, no. Use that same disconnect that you had with Hitman and apply this to World of Warcraft. Because a character like uh, Elune, and even if we want to go a little closer to home first, if you're talking about a character like Odin, is Odin lying to us, or is Odin simply telling us what he believes we need to hear? The answer is probably the latter, just because in Odin's mind, we mortals cannot possibly comprehend the intricacy and complexity of the universe that we find ourselves in. And oftentimes, it is important or necessary even to obfuscate some of the truth, right? Or at least some of reality needs to be obfuscated in order to ensure that the journey remains pleasant, or that the train remains on the tracks, or whatever this could be. Now, onto Elune, there is a lot of deception. Around Elune, actually, I would say, more so than from Elune. The question was, is Elune lying? And the answer is, what are you talking about? Elune has never spoken to us. Elune spoke once, and that was through Tyrande to her sister. And all she told her sister was stuff we already knew, right? She said, yeah, I sent forth the souls. And then her sister said, oh, shit. We kind of forgot the door open and all the souls fucked off into the maw. And she was like, oh, oops, right? What are we going to do? Those souls are now in the maw, And that was the end of the fucking conversation. So what have she lied about? Absolutely nothing. She doesn't speak. Now, are we being deceived? Almost definitely. There is obviously a lot more around Elune than what we know. And Hurricane asking the very real question here, do you believe Elune is hot? I used to think yes, but then I saw the Winter Queen, and I was like, if you two are sisters, then I fucking hope the Winter Queen is the ugly one. Right?
What, you're not into massive antlers and butterfly wings?
Even if you lose the antlers and the butterfly wings, she's still not hot. Just objectively, the Winter Queen is not fucking hot. So, yeah, I really hope that she's the ugly duckling of the family, because otherwise it's fucking slim pickings, right? No. I don't know. I think if... To be fair, though, there's no Titan level creatures that is actually hot, because ANR isn't a looker either, right? It seems like Blizzard went the sort of opposite way when it comes to Titans. A lot of the characters in the game they've made as sexy as possible, although I will say the last few characters that Blizzard have introduced have not been lookers. The last few main characters that Blizzard have introduced into the game have been quite fucking bland, if you ask me. So, maybe Blizzard is just on a new bend where sexy characters isn't allowed or some shit. So I honestly don't know. But no, back to the original question. Do I think Elune is lying? No. I think Elune is deceptive, but I don't think she's lying. I think Elune is hiding something from us, because the dangers of us knowing would be far greater than the dangers of us not knowing, at least to her mind, at least in how she views the world. Now, I mean, you can take this whichever way you want, right? There's so much sort of loose ends around who Elune is and what Elune is, that it is really difficult to put your finger on it. It's a difficult question to answer because, like I said, she hasn't really spoken to us much. There's definitely people that distrust her. One of the ones that stood out to me in terms of distrust, or shall we say mistrust, rather, is Azshara. Why Azshara doesn't trust her is interesting.
I mean, Azshara did go straight into Sargeras's arms. Like, she studied the arcane. She wasn't really a priestess, like when she was still a night elf.
Yeah.
And then again, as a Naga, she doubled down with N'Zoth just to survive. And yeah, there's nothing. I mean, a lot of people would pray to Elune for her benefit, but she herself never once intoned a prayer to Elune. And I'm even thinking about the novelization of the War of the Ancients. Like, she was just obsessed with herself.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting that, I mean, they all come from the Kaldorei, right? That's the origin. So Elune it forms an incredibly sort of central part to the origins of elves everywhere. And yet, of all the elves, it is only the original Kaldorei that kept to their religion, that kept to their belief to Elune, or in Elune. The others sort of renounced Elune, or at best, if they do still worship Elune, these are pockets of worship and not worship culture-wide. Not like with the Kaldorei. So it is weird, especially since we know Elune to be real. You know, it's a whole different story if you're dealing with a god that you don't know, right? If your god or goddess may or may not be real, depending on that's different. You can sort of understand why one group of people would have gone their own way and another may have stuck with that religion just because you have no idea. But with Elune, we know that she has interfered in the past. We know that she is real. We've seen her power. And yet, there are factions within Elven society that completely broke away from the worship of Elune, that really did go their own way, and they started worshipping either, you know, unknown entities. In the case of Ajara and her followers, they were far more obsessed with magic than they were necessarily with god worship, as it were. The Blood Elves for a while, or shall we say the High Elves for a while, some light worship, although not in the way that you would probably think of it. And then, of course, a lot of arcane worship, or maybe addiction is a better word for that one. The point is they didn't stick to Elune. So there's definitely something with Elune.
They started going from the minute Ajara started conversing with Sargeras through the Well of Eternity, the Highborn of the Kaldorei, which eventually would become the High Elves and later, of course, the Blood Elves, started to shift their worship from not only Elune herself, but to just the concept of magic.
Yeah.
They started to worship the kind of themselves because they controlled the magic, but more specifically, they saw the Well of Eternity and subsequently the Sunwell as their birthright. Like they were born into nobility. They were born as these masters of the arcane, and by rights, they should be the only ones that have access to the Well of Eternity and later on the Sunwell. Like, they completely abandoned any worship of Elune to basically worship themselves.
Yeah, which is weird, right? Because they all come from the origins of Elune worship, and yet they turned their back on it. Why? Could it be that they saw something or perhaps didn't see enough of something? Could it be that they simply saw the limits to what Elune was capable of? God, there's so many different answers to this, because it's not automatic to me that Elune would have a problem with them using the magic from the Well of Eternity. Elune, as a goddess, have never had a problem with the use of magic. At least, not that I know of. Like, she doesn't stop anyone from using magic.
Her stuff has always been kind of a mixture of as we understand it, nature and arcane. I mean, even though in WoW, Night Elf priests conjure with the light. Initially, before in Classic, when everybody had every race that could be a priest had a special spell. The Night Elves had a arcane damaging spell.
True.
even though they were priests that used either shadow or the light.
Very, very true. I just want to say, though, I see people in chat, Yala and Mac, having a conversation. Okay, so Mac, the trolls, at least the dark trolls, will have almost certainly believed in Elune to some extent. Just because that's where the Calderai comes from, you know. Origins Dark Troll became Night Elves, Calderai, and then ultimately you would have the cacophony of elven kingdoms or breeds or difference. I don't even like calling it different species because it really isn't, right? It's not even really different races, but let's just say the different elven races of Azeroth. But they all find their origins from the dark trolls, and you know, considering where they come from, and considering the fact that we have no evidence to show that there has ever been a Calderai society that did not worship Elune, it stands to reason that it must have been that the trolls worshipped Elune first, and when they evolved to become Calderai, that stuck. You know, that belief in Elune stuck. Now there, we can get into a lot of discussion about were the Dark Trolls always going to become Night Elf? Or was this perhaps a little bit guided? I would lean towards guided being a more likely scenario, if you will. But I could be completely wrong, of course. Anyways, I really hope that answers the question. It is a difficult question, because does Elune lie? Short answer, no. Because she doesn't speak. She says nothing. So, you know, that's like saying your girlfriend lied to you because she sucked another guy's dick. If she didn't tell you that she wasn't sucking someone else's dick at the time that she was sucking someone else's dick, technically she wasn't lying. Yes, she was sucking your best friend's dick, but she did not tell you that she wasn't sucking your best friend's dick. It just happens to be the thing that she was doing at the time without telling you. But that's not a lie. That's just called cheating. So, yeah, Elune doesn't lie. She just sucks the dick and doesn't tell you about it. If she even sucks the dick, we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I don't know if Elune is the kind of girl that will go on her knees. I mean, I don't know her preferences. So we'll have to wait and see. Maybe she's a lesbian. You know, who knows? We don't know. Nothing is known about Elune. So really, you can make up your mind about this shit.